Joining me today is Matthew Thompson, the writer-director of Handle with Care. He's a hometown Simsbury native, and I'm excited to sit with him and talk about his new film that just screened here in Hartford.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yay. Thank you for coming. So you grew up here in Simsbury?
I did. We sort of moved around a bit while I was young, but we moved here when I was about 11. And so I finished up elementary school, middle school, and then high school here.
And in thinking about this film, is there anything you think of as far as your experience here in Simsbury that inspired you or that you brought into the film in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just from a getting into film standpoint, you know, a lot of the friends that I made at Simsbury High School, we would make videos together. I think coming up in the skateboarding world as well, I mentioned a little bit when we were talking before, skateboarding has a lot of film elements to it. You know, you're always videotaping you and your friends and that sort of thing. So I think all of that really played into just my trajectory going into film in general. I learned to edit, you know, using my parents' computer. We were filming skateboarding all over the town. Often at Simsbury High School, I would do a video, like a short film of some sort instead of a paper or for a project. You know, what's funny is this is a handful of years ago. So not everyone had a camera in their pocket at all times the way they do now. So it was, you know, like mini DV tapes, that sort of thing. So it was a camcorder. And it's funny how much that's changed when you think about it.
For sure, yeah, you had to be prepared, and to your point, you had to have batteries and make sure you knew when it was going to run out and that kind of thing.
And it's only, you know, even in like the last 5-10 years, it's changed so much. It's crazy.
Yeah. Tell me about your progression after high school and college. Where did you go to college?
I went to college at Suffolk University in Boston. And they had sort of like a very small film program. I actually just went for general communications, media. I studied some art history, some philosophy. You know, this is sort of funny, but I chose Boston because at the time it had a great skateboarding scene. But along the way, I kind of joined the student television station, and that you had access to cameras and access to some lighting equipment. And I just started using everything that I had been doing in Simsbury of skateboarding videos and these sorts of things, and started making music videos for a friend's band or higher concept short films than the skateboarding videos that I had been making, and really experimenting a lot. So it was sort of a, I don't know, highly untrained practice.
Which is great because it's how you hone your craft and you learn by doing. And oftentimes you don't learn that. You can learn it in a formal school setting, but to be able to actually put it to practice is the way to really learn.
But just so many, I don't know, so many little mistakes. And it's almost like you just things that you learn from. That's hard to even really call it a mistake because it led to the next thing. But, you know, you don't see that project you're going to make in 5 years, your older self, 10 years down the line. You see whatever you're working on right then as kind of like, oh, everything is reliant on this. Someone's going to see this and whisk me away to Hollywood. I feel like you always think that in college.
And you also talked about earlier to me that in the back of your mind, you always did dream about working in film, even though that's not the path you started on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I always loved movies when I was a little kid. I was obsessed with the Christopher Reeve Superman, and I just liked Superman in general. If you look at our family photo albums, I'm wearing a cape everywhere, all the time. There'd probably be like a family funeral, and I'm sure they had to pry the cape off of me. I always had a Superman cape on. I just like loved Superman, and we would watch these movies over and over again. And I think I just always loved it. You know, I remember with my mom, she would take me when they reissued the Star Wars, and I saw it on the big screen for the first time. And these sorts of experiences were so formative for me. But I think, you know, my dad's a physician and my mom taught at a community college. They're very much wonderful people, but not in the arts necessarily. And so I don't think that any of us really had an appreciation of, you know, this is a job, this is a track, this is what you should do. You should go to, you know, a great film school like NYU, or you should go to USC, or you should do these things. You know, I didn't think about it. I don't think they were aware of it by no fault of theirs. It's just a totally different world than, you know, medicine and academia.
So you went into making commercials.
I did. So started with an obsession with movies, always loved it. Again, didn't know it was a job. And then through making skateboarding videos, making music videos, I became quite adept at editing. after college, I got a job working as an editor at an ad agency in Boston called Allen and Garrettson. They did a lot of B2B advertising, which is, things for pharmaceutical companies, but they also did all the advertising for the Boston Celtics. So I was an assistant editor there, and I would work with this great editor who kind of taught me a ton about just the whole workflow and everything. And essentially one weekend I was shooting a music video, and this is after college, after I'd been working at the agency for about a year. I was shooting a music video, and so we had this camera package and some lights rented for Saturday. But what's great is if you rent something from a rental house and you pick it up on Friday, you pay for one day, but you get it the whole weekend. And so I was like, oh, well, on Sunday, let's cast a kid from, a local school in middle school, and let's shoot a spec commercial for the Boston Celtics. And so I shot a music video on Saturday, and then we went to East Boston and we cast this kid and we shot a spec commercial for the Boston Celtics. And I showed it to the creative directors at the ad agency, and they hired me later to do some directing work. That's how I got my first kind of...
Great.
Yeah, it's, I look back on it now and it's very brazen of me.
Very brave, yeah.
20-something logic.
Yeah. Right? I mean, why not?
Yeah, so we started really small, but it was a great place to work. They were really generous. And I always wanted to move to New York. But when I graduated, it was around kind of economic recession times and things like that. So having a job in Boston was so great. So I stayed there for a year after college and then moved to New York. Got into commercials, and for a while had my own production company with a business partner, and was always working on short films, but really spent a handful of years really trying to have a career path in the commercial space.
That's exciting. And then here we are today talking about your film. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Is this your first film, or?
It is my first feature-length film, yes. And it's the fourth script that I've written. So I've written multiple feature-length scripts. But yeah, this is the first one to write, direct, have shot, and now have be done.
That's so exciting.
Thanks. It is.
Tell me about the inspiration for this particular film.
I think that I was always inspired by strangers in New York City. I feel like New York is kind of a city full of strangers. And I also feel like, when you're at a certain age and you're moving around a lot, you're getting a lot of things secondhand, you have all these interactions on Craigslist and on these platforms, and you end up meeting these strangers. And I don't know if it's me, because I talk to other people and they're like, yeah, I bought the thing and it didn't happen. Somehow or other, I just end up hearing the story of someone's life. And I kind of love it.
When you meet them?
When I meet them, yeah, I don't know why or how it happens, but I feel so fortunate that people will open up to me. And so it's not purely through buying or selling things on Craigslist, but just in New York, I feel like, for example, there was a sample sale and my wife couldn't go. And so I went and I waited in line and ended up meeting these people and hearing their life story. And it was just fascinating who is kind of right next to you and you just don't realize. So that's one element of it, which is sort of like the background. I also feel like a big part of it for me is having grown up with the internet, even though I'm in the millennial generation. So I grew up with the internet, but it really wasn't what it is today for younger kids, where they grew up and they really are immersed in it. And I feel like having had access to so much information, there's sort of this idea to me, whereas we have all this knowledge, but very little wisdom. We have very little lived experience because we think we know everything, because we're like, well, I'll just Google it and then I know. Oh, I don't have to try that.
But there are a lot of statistics in the movie where you have the character turn to the camera and recite statistics.
Right, exactly. And that's thank you. That will bring us back. And so considering that the character of Cole, I relate to very much, his trajectory, again, in the beginning of the movie, he'll have these statistics. And it's very much like, I have all the knowledge. Oh, the statistics of divorce, or where the background of a wedding registry is, what the history of an engagement ring is. These are all these, we call them tangents in the film. It's where Cole goes into his mind and kind of veers off in just a purely informative way, but not a wise way necessarily. And those all happen in the first half of the film. And even he and his friend, I do find one thing that's really interesting is when you're with your friends and then you Google something and you discuss it and, I'm on Wikipedia. And, there is an element of that that's really nice. But throughout the film, he gradually stops thinking he knows it all and starts listening to the people that he's meeting. If you look back at it, the first person he meets, he's sort of on his phone, he's texting to leave. He's like, okay, cool, like just give me the money for the thing that I'm selling you. And gradually, until it changes his interactions, until the end when he really sits with this woman and he really hears her story, and she kind of takes over the movie for a little bit. And this character says, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth and you should use them accordingly.
That her father told
That
me
her
that all the
father
time.
told her, which is, listen more than you speak, which is something that my dad always would say. And,
So that's a little autobiographical.
Totally. Yeah, so, there's a lot of little things that kind of work their way into it. But yeah, always fascinated by like interactions with strangers.
Is the main character's story based on anybody you know?
Yes, actually, so I was in a short-lived marriage after college. I kind of married my college sweetheart. And then I feel like, kind of realized that it wasn't meant to be. And in the dissolution of it, we're sort of shocked by the logistics of divorce when marriage really is so easy. And I think that, that part of it, that element of how, this very emotional decision really, on the front end, it feels so emotional and beautiful and wonderful. And then on the back end, it's really like financial. It is purely financial. It is purely about assets and that sort of divvying up of things. But I actually know multiple friends and people who have had similar experiences where it's like sort of short-lived thing, and then it's just like this fallout from it. But what's sort of interesting is it is a movie about divorce, but one of the actors actually who plays the lawyer came to a friends and family screening in New York. And after the screening, he said, this is a movie about divorce, but it's really a love letter to marriage and to love, which I think, it's not this anti-marriage propaganda, even though Cole, the character, really starts believing that and thinks that in the beginning.
It's interesting. It really is. Yeah. I was struck by the idea that these characters were, that just the argumentative nature of the dissolution, basically the marriage falling apart, and then how it did seem really depressing in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it lightened based on his relationship with his friend there, and the fact that they were then getting married,
Right.
sort of
Operates
I
as
imagine,
a foil to
right,
his, they're doing everything he can't bring himself to because he's hesitating.
Right. And do you think by the end of the movie, the idea is that he has kind of come full circle and opened his mind to being in a relationship again? Because I was sharing with somebody earlier that in a way, just seeing that final scene set at New Year's Eve, and it just brought me to the movie When Harry Met Sally, but you kind of crave that happy ending. And I don't really, I don't want to give the movie away, but the ending I wouldn't say was quite like that, but it was open-ended in a way.
I think it's open-ended. I don't think it's necessarily sad or happy. I think it's sort of that bittersweet, which feels very true to life for me. Mm-hmm. What's so fascinating about When Harry Met Sally is that they weren't supposed to end up together in the end. But during the filming of the movie, Rob Reiner met his future wife and then fell in love. And it was this amazing example of how, truth and fiction sort of merge. And then it's because it was based on he and Nora Ephron's friendship, mm-hmm. and how these longtime friends and, that sort of thing. And then they decided to have them end up together. So to me, I think that, I think it's about Cole realizing that he still has a lot to learn and that maybe he wasn't ready for certain things, but also that he has to be open with other people. Because if you try and continue down your own lane and make decisions not as a partnership, not as a part of a functioning member in a partnership, and you make a very selfish decision, that it can really derail this. And you learn from your mistakes, So I think that that's a really important element to it.
Interesting. And how have you found people to be, you mentioned having some screenings in New York, and then how have people been reacting to the film in your experience?
I mean, to me, they're overwhelmingly positive. I think a lot of the people probably know how hard it is to make a movie, and that I've been, living with getting the money and shooting it and all these things for a couple years now. And so people have been overwhelmingly positive. I think what's so fascinating to see we've really only had one screening in New York, which was some of the cast and crew, but a lot of strangers as well, people who don't know me at all, but knew a producer or a sound person who worked on the film. And seeing that in New York, the first half of the movie, especially the lawyer, got a lot of laughs, like really almost raucous laughter. And maybe again, because like people were there who had been part of the filming. Mm-hmm. And I think that just a very different audience, it was sort of a mixture. There was some college students, one student from Miss Porter's at the Hartford screening, and she came up to me afterwards, and I was so fascinated to hear her perspective on the film, because you're like, what does a teenager think of this
and what
story?
Was it?
She loved it. She's actually she is part of a film club, and they do like a screening and wants to do a screening there, and she put me in touch with her teacher to see if we can arrange one, that would be really which would be really neat. Yeah. And I would love to hear their reactions. Like, what do they... Because, when I was in high school, you watch these movies that are about like older people, which now, I am very much the older person. But it was, sort of aspirational, and you kind of see this and you think about your own life and what your life will be and all that sort of thing. So it's been overwhelmingly positive, and I'm also so flattered by the different things that people pull out of it. Something that really affects someone. A couple people love the character of the neighbor. And that ending conversation between the neighbor and our lead character, Cole, for some people, they were like, that was so emotional. I was like ready to cry or cried or something. Right. And then other people love, the best friend characters, the two, they're kind of a couple that are two best friends, and just thought they were so funny and their love was so natural. And people have asked like, oh, are they a real couple in real life? But it's just a testament to they're both in relationships with other people, but their chemistry was just so strong. And, I think that now what's really neat is that everyone on set became friends and keeps in touch. So that's kind of special. But,
very, very nice.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of different reactions.
How long did it take you from, like, in terms of writing the script to here we are at the point of being able to I know, screen it? It's
so hard to quantify because, so I mentioned those other scripts I had. There've been a few, I'll kind of bounce from one project to another in the scripting stage, because if sometimes you get stuck, writer's block or something like that, and then something else is inspiring, so you kind of chase that for a while. So I had been working on it on and off for a couple years, and then the beginning of 2024, in February, the producers that I've been working with, and we were trying to get some other projects off the ground, we were close to one and it kind of fell apart, and then we realized, we were talking about what we could do. And of the scripts that I had written, Handle with Care, at the time was actually a TV show where each episode was a different gift that he was giving, and that would be the whole episode. And so at that point, so February of 2024, it was like a 215-page miniseries. But looking at the project and kind of how it would come together, we knew that we would need the least amount of money to shoot that if we did it as a feature. So I actually just started telling people that we were going to shoot in October that year, get ready. And then I started raising the money, trimming the script down to, when we shot, it was 94 pages, scouting and all of that. So, the actual, okay, we're going to turn this into a movie and then go shoot it was like, I don't know, February to October. So pretty quick. Mm-hmm. But I had been working to get the, source material for a couple of years before that.
And was all of it shot in Manhattan or the boroughs?
Yeah, we touched every borough.
Was that by design?
Sort of, yeah, I think so. I wanted to, I think part of it was to show areas in New York that I don't always see, but still have it feel like New York. Again, I think because of skateboarding, I've been really lucky, and part of it is you just travel around the city. One of my friends would just drop a pin somewhere randomly, and we would all bike to it and skateboard and find places around there. So that idea of exploring and, again, getting a little bit off the beaten path and not just seeing all the areas in New York that we've seen a lot was definitely part of the inspiration. Is
there anything else about the film that you think it's important to share with people?
This is funny. Maybe I'm like leading the witness here a little bit, but something that I've been fascinated with is time and attention. And especially right now with the way our attention is so fractured. I'm sure you see with your kids the way they interact with social media. And like, I'm so curious how that's going to change and evolve. Because again, for me, like watching movies, I have no problem putting my phone away and watching a movie. I love not looking on my phone. I actually hate being on my phone. But I know that our attention has changed. And so when designing the film, it was actually very intentional. The first half of the movie has maybe twice as many cuts, literal cuts and pacing as the second. It starts really fast and then gradually slows down. And there is an element of deprogramming that's very intentional in the filmmaking that I don't know if it's gonna work, but my idea was like, I really want people to get to the emotionally resonant parts. So I tried to make the first half really funny, really quick, lots of stuff happening. You really are totally, you don't easily distract from the story because you're like, okay, a lot's happening. I really want to follow along. Part of that is you don't know where these films are going to be seen. You don't know if it's going to be in a theater, even though that's my dream. But if it's on Netflix or one of these streaming services and you're competing for attention so much, I'm very curious to see if that works. And if people notice it, that's where I say I'm leading the witness. Like, I don't want to just give that away. I would love for someone to notice it. But it was really intentional. Like, we really thought about it a lot and would visually lay out note cards is how I work with writing. And so you could visually see the structure of the film and kind of like how it mirrors each other.
I think for me, seeing this film, it caused me to think a lot. And I thought it was very cerebral, and I kept, replaying many of the scenes in my head after watching it.
Oh, that's so flattering. I said this to someone at the screening very sweetly said, like, man, I need to think about this for a while. And again, back to this idea of time. I'm really interested by time and how we spend our time. And I think it's because I see so many people wasting time. And it is such a valuable thing. Like, we will never get it back. It's really just passing. There is no future or past or any of these things. Like, it's really fleeting. So I'm always almost like, I'm just so flattered when someone spends 93 minutes of their life, precious time, and they spend it with this movie, and then they say something like, I'm gonna keep thinking about it. It's like, gosh, you're gonna give more time to this thing. I mean, it's really wonderful. So thank you. That's like...
You're welcome, thank you. It's interesting too, because the whole time I thought you were a 20-something, and I kept thinking, how can a 20-something have this much insight into relationships and the human dynamic and how people interact with each other? And so now I sort of understand
yeah,
that you've lived.
Definitely not a 20-something,
yeah.
Not anymore.
That's okay, but you were.
That's right,
and
I was.
And the characters are. So I guess that's why
I imagine them as 30, like right at that.
I was picturing them to be,
point,
I guess.
I mean, I guess it's kind of open.
Yeah.
I think Justin and Nicole are early 30s as, human beings, not characters in the movie, but I think it's pretty open.
Yeah.
To me, it's non-specific, so
good.
Wherever people relate to them, I think is good.
Once you set this sailing,
I
have
know.
other things in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have these other projects. One is set actually in Rhode Island, on an island off the coast, which is sort of spooky thriller. Another one is set in Maine along the US-Canada borderline, which is more of like a kind of a No Country for Old Men style Western thriller. And then there's one actually set in Hartford. And it is loosely based on the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but a modern story. And it's essentially about these two boys from very different backgrounds. One lives in a suburb outside of Hartford. Another one comes from inner city Hartford. And through a busing program, they go to the same school. And they become best friends. And they, a lot of it is about how they see the world very differently, but in the end, they have much more in common than they do dividing them. They, very much like Stand By Me, decide that they're going to go on an adventure down the Connecticut River. They want to run away to New York City, which is very like 14-year-old boy logic. Like, I, definitely didn't think I could die at 14. You're just like, anything goes. And so it's really, kind of a classic adventure story. Think of The Goonies and Stand By Me and these movies that, like, when I was a kid, I just loved. And you see it as a kid and you're like, oh, that's all I want. I want to go on a big adventure. It's really, it is this celebration of friendship. And then there's also an element where the parents, this mom from a very nice suburban town and this dad from inner city Hartford, realize the kids are gone and they team up to go after them. And they see the world in a very different way. And they have to kind of find common ground with one another. But again, you know, coming back to this theme of having much more in common than dividing us. And I think a big inspiration, of course, was my time at Simsbury High and, you know, the ABC program where kids would come in from inner city Hartford and have very different backgrounds. But again, through skateboarding. I would end up in, you know, areas of Boston or South Boston or areas that they would probably tell you not to go to. And I was amazed at how warm and welcoming in general people were. And I found it inspiring. Maybe it's, you know, being the 20-something and on a skateboard, they're like, well, you're not a threat or trying to gentrify or what, you know, you're not really doing anything to our neighborhood. But yeah, I don't know. I think that especially right now, we kind of live in a very polarizing time and a very divided time. And I keep coming back to this idea that I've really found people to be generally nice.
Right.
You know, like genuinely good.
Yes.
And all over New York City too, you know, I've been all over and like certainly, yeah, you have interactions that is like not their best day or something like that. But really the median average.
Yeah.
But really like
Average for the people are inherently good.
yes, I really do think that there's a lot more good than bad. And I think that coverage and what we see, and you know, I remember reading this thing that a lot of these incredibly negative things you see on Twitter or highly polarizing things, they get more likes, they get more hits. And so a lot of times these people don't even care. They don't believe it. They know that they're going to make more money off of a negative interaction. And so they kind of spread these things that they don't even necessarily care about. And I think that that has really led to people being, I don't know, afraid of the world and afraid of other and afraid of all this thing. So, you know, this is very high level thoughts, but like in a wonderful way, just how nice if, you know, a little part of this film or the next film could start getting people to like look with empathy towards each other.
Yes, and open their minds to.
I hope so. I don't want to like, you know, anoint myself this sayer of truths or something like that,
No,
but it's really, I really believe it. I really do.
It is very introspective, especially thinking about how, like you say, we've changed as a people through social media and the way it is today versus when you were younger, and that didn't really, you didn't have that.
I was talking to my mom today about, you know, in high school, my friends and I, we haven't had this much snow as we have right now. This is a big winter. And she was talking about, oh, remember when you and your friends would build all those snowboard jumps out back or be outside? And I thought about it. I don't have a single childhood memory being on a computer. Mm-hmm. I watched a lot of movies. I loved movies. I would always rent a movie and watch one. And I would play video games with a friend. You know, you're there, you each have a controller and you're sharing an experience. But it's crazy to think that there's some article in The Atlantic that was about film students now who struggle to sit through movies. They're studying film at USC or Tufts and these places, and they interview these professors that say that, you know, they look out at these kids and it's like looking at nicotine addicts on an airplane. You know, like they just are fidgeting and they're really anxious to look at their phones. Mm-hmm. And it's not a desire, it's an addiction. You know, it's like, it really is almost an illness. You know, you don't want to fault them for it. In the article, they said a lot of these kids have averaged 5 hours of screen time every day since they were like 7 years old. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. I don't know. It is wild when you think about that. I'm sure when you think of your childhood, you're like, I don't know, I was outside playing, playing with my friends and doing this, playing hide and seek. Like, I don't know. I don't think about, like, yeah, we had a family computer. All I remember is editing videos on it that I would then go out into the world and shoot more videos.
And I'm older than you, so the first computer wasn't even, I mean, it was like, you know, X, Y, it wasn't even.
Yeah, it's sort of a profound change. So again, I don't want to sound like I'm faulting younger generations or anything like that, but it's just, you know, I think a lot about this stuff, and it's, I think we all kind of should.
As I think most filmmakers probably do, because you're shining a lens on the society that you're witnessing. Absolutely.
And I think also, I think about it a lot because, you know, people keep saying moviegoing is down and the business is struggling and all these sorts of things. We're in the sea change of entertainment because there's so many choices, and yet people are kind of sitting at home on their phone with the TV on, the second screen viewing, they call it. And so I hope that changes, and I try to talk about it every time I can, because like, who knows, you change one person's mind and hopefully they pay it forward.
Making a film like this, with some of it being, some of it's introspective, some of it is autobiographical, does that make you feel vulnerable?
A little bit, but I think that, I remember telling a writer, another screenwriter, I said, the film is semi-autobiographical. And they said, everything you write will be semi-autobiographical. If you write a Civil War movie, that is the Civil War through your lens. So you can't escape it. If you are a writer or an artist or a filmmaker and you're not leaving a pound of flesh, like on the page or on the screen, then I think that no one will feel it. So yes, it is, you do give a lot of yourself, and it's always nerve-wracking, there's so many things about yourself, but I think it's good to be vulnerable in public. Again, I think, if we're all kind of closed off, it goes back to what we were saying before, and we all feel a little divided or isolated or in our own little lane, what an amazing thing to be the change you want to see in the world. Just like put yourself out there and be open. It's like, I'm sure, I can't wait to see on what Letterboxd or these things. People are going to tear things apart. I'm sure a lot of people will love it, but you see these reviews on, anywhere, because anyone can post a review. Sure. I am sure someone will absolutely try to obliterate it. And it would be so great to find and just be like, thanks so much for the review. This is great. I'm glad you had a very strong emotional response to it, even if it was negative. Hopefully you come see another movie sometime and it goes better. People
talk about bias, but also to your point, in any creative work, it's all perspective. So Absolutely. Your creativity is based on your perspective. My viewership is going to be my perspective. And so what I take from your film may not be what you necessarily intended, but it's my perspective in receiving and viewing.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the best part about art. It's like, it does mean one thing to me, but if it means something different to you, if it means anything to you, then I am so humbled by that. And yeah, I think that, there's a specificity, or I'm not sure what exactly it is, but it feels like people are afraid of that gray area, or they really want to put something in a bucket more than ever, which is funny considering you'd think that there'd be more, openness to it. But another thing is, this trend in Hollywood where it's sort of, you can only make this movie if you've done this thing, or you are this type of person, or you are this. And again, I think the over-categorizing of people and whatever orientations or things like this, it would be like if you only allow actors who are gay to play characters who are gay, or something of those sorts. And I think that just as long as you approach things with empathy and you really try to tell an honest part of a story, I think exactly right. No matter what, you yourself will end up there. But I think I always get afraid when artists are really pigeonholed into like, well, you're so-and-so. And so this is the one thing that we're going to let you do over and over and over.
Right.
Because as I was talking about, the other films I want to make aren't necessarily like romantic comedy dramas. I like lots of different genres of films. So I hope I get to try.
I hope you do too.
Let's see.
Yeah. So I'm so grateful for you coming to visit with us today and share this story about making Handle with Care. Thank you so much for your time, Matthew.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for watching.
My pleasure.
You complete me. Beautiful, isn't it? Books, movies, TV shows, music, all pushing us toward this common goal. It's shocking how easy it is to get married. You go to City Hall, show your ID, pay $35, bam, wed. And it's far too easy considering the process of divorce.
Now, the first thing we're going to do is complete a DOA, also known as a Declaration of Assets.
Okay, turkeys, let's calculate Cole's divorce. Take the combined income minus the lower earner's income, take $30,000, subtract $10,000, and pick the higher or lower depending on the circumstances. And that means regardless, Cole will not be able to afford his current apartment and needs to settle all assets and move out by the end of the year, which is in 3 months and 14 days.
Unopened wedding presents.
Wow.
You should return what you can and sell what you can't, ASAP. because you're going to be moving from spousal support to pendente light.
Come on. This shit is giving me agita. I would get started on it.
Pendente light. It's like a Mexican beer. Viva la pendente light.
Are you kidding?
There's a bunch of stuff I can't return, and I don't think it should all be on me to what? Sell them online?
You got a lot of work to do.
Young people are so caught up with this idea of happiness, how to get it, where to get it, whether or not they got it.
Am I the only one starting to feel like an unwanted item for sale on the internet?
You gotta put yourself out there at some point, all right, bud? All right, it's the only way you're gonna move on.
You don't have to fall in love right away, Cole.
We get so caught up trying to explain what love is that I think we forget it's best left to be experienced. See you around?
Yeah, no, it seems unlikely, but okay.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town,
Bringing us together through local programming,
education, and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings, and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions. And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue,
Even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
Continues to educate our youth and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
For generations to come.
Visit our website.
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
Counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media.
where your town
Your schools
And your government come together.